disclaimer. This
meeting is being recorded.
This presentation represents the speaker's views and not necessarily those of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation or its board of directors. This presentation cannot be reproduced or distributed by a third party or on a third party website. Webinar guidelines. Please use the chat box to submit questions or comments and send them to everyone. You should be in listen-only mode, but please mute your telephone or microphone just in case. Please keep your cameras off to save bandwidth. If you are a speaker, please turn on your cameras. And by the way, I believe this event we will have the cameras on. So that's a correction right there. The roster and PowerPoint presentations are visible after webinar. Registrants will receive a follow-up survey after the webinar. If you're not in receipt of the survey, roster, and PowerPoint presentation, please email Erwin Reeves. His email address is erreeves@fdic.gov. If you have any objections to sharing your contact information, please email Erwin Reeves to opt out. I would like to introduce today's host, Erwin Reeves, Community Affairs Specialist, San Francisco Community Affairs, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
Thank you, Monet. Good morning and welcome to supporting Phytosites and free tax services throughout the Pacific Northwest. Economic inclusion is an integral part of the FDIC's mission to maintain stability and public confidence in the nation's financial system. Having a bank account is the first step for establishing a banking relationship, and tax season is a great time to open a bank account since it is critical to receiving timely income tax refunds via direct deposit. This tax season, we want to remind you that some low-income families may be eligible for significant tax refunds due to the remaining child tax credits and the earned income tax credit. By encouraging households to open a bank account before filing their taxes, they will be on the path to receiving their tax refunds significantly faster. The FDIC has created a dedicated page for consumers interested in opening a bank account at www.fdic.gov/getbanked. The webpage is available in English and Spanish and has been updated to include some great tax time resources. This is our agenda for the day. Our primary areas of discussion are the importance of supporting free tax services, and let's talk about those tax services. This talented group will provide insight into the services provided throughout the Pacific Northwest. These are the objectives for the webinar. In short, it's really to highlight the critical needs of organizations providing these services for low-income families and featuring the opportunities to expand the collaboration with community stakeholders. While we want to quantify impact, supporting free tax services is not a casual activity. There must be an intentional effort to design products and programs that are functional and feasible. These are our outcomes. And so for my bankers, I really want you to think about ways that you can actively expand collaboration with nonprofit organizations and other community stakeholders. And for the nonprofit organizations, really think about how to align your relationships with your banks to make sure that you're getting the best that you can and articulating those needs so that the bankers can do a good job of helping you in supporting those programs. Let's take a quick poll. So Jennifer, if you can activate the polling function, What is your organization type? So if you're a financial institution, providing education, government, that can be federal, state, local, county, nonprofit organization, or if you consider yourself more of a community-based organization. And if you're other, if you would please put that in the chat. You can select other, but also let us know what type of organization you are if you consider yourself other. And then if you're a CDFI, you really get the opportunity to pick what you're looking for. Right, so we've got right now 46% financial institutions, 16% government, 32% nonprofit. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jennifer. So when we're thinking about, work with me here, Monet, when we're thinking about tax time, we really know that it can be very confusing for folks. But imagine if you have a few other challenges, actually getting to a tax site, actually finding someone that's not going to rip you off, trying to figure out how to work with an organization and know that that organization has your best interest at heart. And that's what we really get when we start talking about the free tax services that are available, both at Phytosites, TaxAid, and there are a number of other organizations that are also putting that activity out there. It's really important that we make sure that low and moderate income families and households are getting access to these resources so that they're not being taken advantage of by predatory lenders, by predatory tax preparers, and other alternative financial services that are seeking to actually take the little money that they're getting. Monet, next slide, please. So these are just some of the concerns that we have when you're thinking about getting your taxes done. Imagine this when your income's been cut. Imagine this when you're worried about the pandemic. Imagine this when you're worried about the status of your children. So it is really imperative that we make sure that we're getting in front of this. And one way that this can happen is to create collaboration that really focuses on the end user. For the banks, community development credit services, that's great. And a wonderful way to present it. And there's also that opportunity for community development investments when you're actually making those investments, making those donations to the programs. But don't design a program that's going to be restrictive for that end user. It's really imperative that that end user be at the forefront of what you're thinking about from that standpoint. Monet, next slide. So why is this important? The primary reason is that the absorbent fees that are charged by tax preparers are literally set up at a point now where the moment that they walk in, the entire process is designed to take advantage of those tax credits that those consumers can get. So when we're looking at the earned income tax credit, when we're looking at the child tax credit, if you look along this progression, the paid tax preparers are figuring out a way to ease portions of those dollars out, which means those families do not have access to that funding, and it limits their overall financial feasibility. I can't express to you enough that this is something that is very detrimental to the community. It's very detrimental to these households, and it limits their overall stability. Monet, next slide. So that we'd like to introduce just the concept of understanding what a volunteer income tax assistance site is. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time covering these details. That's why we have professionals on the line with us that are going to go into their programs and talk about the ways that the banks can actually help them create stability, improve their infrastructure, and expand their capability to provide tax services. And for other nonprofit partners and government agencies, how you can steer your clients and understand what you're looking for and how to get in connection with a legitimate Vita site. Monet, next slide. The other alternative that we have that we're presenting today is TaxAid. And so we just want to thank these organizations for, one, being around and providing these services, and understanding that it is important for us to figure out ways to create these connections, to create the opportunity for collaboration, and to make sure that we're doing this with the end user, those households that need these services in mind. Monet, next slide. So we've actually gone over the results. We'll go over one more slide. And I would like to introduce to you Jennifer from the Financial Empowerment Network, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the importance of supporting free tax services. Jennifer, please introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you, Erwin. And thank you everyone who's here, our panelists, and everyone who's joining us here today. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and especially thinking about the larger vision of the entire Pacific Northwest. My name is Jennifer Quiroz. I'm the Executive Director of the Financial Empowerment Network. The Financial Empowerment Network envisions communities where low and moderate income individuals and families are able to achieve financial well-being, and we do that through partnerships that support access to affordable, effective, and relevant services, products, and resources. So we're a convener, and we're really happy to have convened you all and have you here today. Our target populations are nonprofits and financial service professionals working towards building financial wellness in their communities. So as part of our work, we are the lead organization for the Bank on Washington initiative. So I'm going to take just a brief moment to talk about Bank On and why it's important. And Monet, you can actually move forward a couple of slides. Next one. So we know that banking access matters. Bank accounts are a foundation for financial wellness. So Bank On, for those of you who are not familiar, Bank On is a national initiative that was developed to meet the needs of folks who are or underbanked. Lacking access to an account can be really expensive. On average, a person who's unbanked will spend $40,000 over their lifetime on financial services fees. Also, we know that folks that are unbanked are also less likely to increase their savings or establish a credit score. In a study that was done by the CFE Fund, the effects of getting banked were very clear. Folks were 8 times more likely to increase their savings relative to folks who did not get an account during their time in a financial counseling program. Another really shocking statistic from the Brookings Institute is that $66 million from the first round of stimulus funds in 2020 went to check cashers, rather than to families who really needed that money and could have accessed those funds for free if they had had an appropriate bank account. Next slide, please. So the CFE Fund, back one. The CFE Fund developed a set of national account standards created with consumers in mind to ensure that accounts are safe, affordable, and functional. These Bank On accounts offer maximum benefit to consumers who may have limited or challenging history with banking. So first of all, they're safe, which means there are no overdraft fees, there are no non-sufficient funds fees or dormancy fees. They're affordable. They have a low minimum, a low opening deposit, low minimum account balance, and low or no monthly fees. And they're functional. Folks are able to use them to pay bills, make deposits, online banking, and speak to customer service as well. The specific requirements for an account to be certified as Bank On are available at the joinbankon.org/resources website. And nationwide, there are now over 170 Bank On certified accounts offered, including 12 here in Washington State. As a side note, if your financial institution does not offer a certified Bank On account and you're interested in exploring that, I'm happy to help. Or if you have clients that could benefit from access to an affordable account at a financial institution, check out our Bank On Washington website. The link is listed later in my slides, or I'm happy to connect folks to financial institutions if you reach out. Okay, now the next slide. But the magic of Bank On is really in the partnerships. It is a collaborative effort. So here in Washington State, our Bank On Coalition has co-chairs from across sectors, from financial institutions, state government, and nonprofit community organizations who help inform and lead our work. Bank On Coalitions aim to identify those money moments when it really makes sense to talk to folks about opening an account, when it's meaningful, relevant, or necessary for their lives. And that's done in partnership with the nonprofit and social service organizations who are already working with vulnerable communities and have those trusted relationships with many or unbanked community members. Bank On believes that by supporting clients' financial stability, they actually will improve the underlying social services goals as well. So one excellent example of this kind of collaboration is in Phytosites. Next slide, please. So why are Phytosites so important? For a number of reasons. Number one, tax time is when a significant portion, or a lot of low to moderate income folks get a significant portion of their annual income back. So in 2018, nearly 50% of clients at Phytosites earned less than $15,000 a year. And the average tax return was over $2,000. So for those clients, that's nearly 14% of their income back into their bank accounts. And we know that low to moderate income filers use the majority of their returns in 4 categories. They're purchasing household necessities, paying down debt, saving for emergencies, and saving for specific future goals. So what we see is folks accessing these Phytosites are really trying to get ahead and catch up. Also, as Erwin talked about already, the average tax return costs $300 from a paid preparer. Plus, there's the temptation of the refund anticipation loans that can shave off more of their refund. Phytosites are free and offer high quality tax services, so it saves community members real money. Phytosites provide access to our nation's greatest anti-poverty tools. So thinking about the Earned Income Tax Credit, thinking about access to that critical stimulus funding, the Advanced Child Tax Credit, and then many Phytosites also help folks with ITIN applications for those who don't have a social security number and need a taxpayer identification number. And last, Phytosites connect folks to additional resources and services to build financial health. So really, when we look at Phytosites, we're looking at a holistic approach to addressing poverty. Many Phytosites partner with programs that help build assets, offer credit counseling, help with savings, benefit screenings, and enrollments. It's been trickier during the pandemic to offer those services, but it's not impossible. And as we all know, we've been very creative and able to pivot to really continue to offer these holistic services. All right, next slide. So I just want to talk about the Advanced Child Tax Credit in particular. In 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act temporarily increased the child tax credit, made it fully refundable, and authorized the IRS to offer half as an advanced monthly payment. Nearly 4 in 10 of adults who received the credit reported using it mostly to pay off debt. 3 in 10 mostly spent it, and about 3 in 10 saved it. For those who were spending it, we know that 51% reported spending the credit on food. The next most common purchases were clothing, utilities, and school supplies. So folks were using the Advanced Child Tax Credit for the most basic needs, and like I said, to catch up and to try and get a little bit ahead. So we know that the tax credit was working for those who received it. However, there were about 67.6 million children who were believed to be eligible, but in the first 2 months, the Treasury Department estimated that it only made payments for about 61 million children. So it was not reaching everyone. There were about nearly 7 million children who did not have access to the child tax credit, the Advanced Child Tax Credit. So today we're not talking about policy changes, but what we do want to talk about is what we can do to ensure that those other nearly 7 million children who did not benefit from the advanced child tax credit and yet are disproportionately in the lowest income families get connected and are able to receive the benefit. And we know that this is exactly the type of connection where Phytosites excel. So with that, next slide, the next 2 slides are just some resources, ways to get in touch with us. And the next slide has some other resources. I will also drop in the chat, there is an excellent resource from National Bank On through the CFE Fund. For folks who want to open accounts without going in person, there are online accounts that folks can open, and I'll drop the link to that in the chat. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Erwin. Thank you. Erwin, you are muted and we can't hear you. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm just here by myself talking for a moment. Jennifer, actually, we have our next poll question up. And this is for folks to think about different ways that you may be able to support Phytosites. And so you'll go ahead and complete that survey for me. That'd be great. The next polling questions. And then Monet, if you can go to the next slide, please. So our next segment is really, let's talk about tax services. And so this talented group of folks that we have here are really those frontline providers, and can really tell us not only what they need, but what they're seeing in their experiences that they've had over the last year and a half, and how they've been able to adapt. Riley, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Riley Eldredge. I'm the director of the Cash Oregon program, which is a program of Metropolitan Family Service. I'm very excited to be here with you all today and looking forward to the continued conversation.
Thank you very much, Riley. Dan, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dan McAvoy. I'm the program manager at the NeighborWorks Umpqua Vita program. We have several sites in different locations, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm just very happy to be part of this, and thank you all for your attention.
Dan, thank you very much. Sue, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sue Curtis, and I actually provide service via the AARP tax aid program in Skagit County, which is about an hour north of Seattle. And so I'm here to tell you a little bit about our program, who we serve, and really what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. And Andrea.
Good morning.
Please.
I'm Andrea. Good morning. I'm Andrea Alexander, the coordinator for the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition. I also run tribal technology training. We provide direct services to Northwest Natives on financial empowerment, literacy, and digital skill building. So thank you very much. I'm honored by the invitation.
Great. With that, we'll have the speakers tell a little bit more about their programs. Riley, take it away.
Yay, thank you so much. MFS Cash Oregon. So we are a Vita program. We're based out of Portland, Oregon. We have a coalition of about 8 to 10 actual physical sites where we have volunteers, about 200 volunteers overall that are working within our program. Last year, we had we were able to complete over 4,000 tax returns. We were very excited about that. And in that, we were able to give about $8 million back into the community absolutely free of charge. So we were really excited about the results of that. But push come to shove, that was a drop in the bucket compared to what we're usually able to do. We had to cut back services in some ways, and due to the COVID environment, and do more limited access overall. So it's a significant action, but there's still so much work to be done. In that same time period, we received about 25,000 inquiries just by phone alone from folks looking to get this specific help. So we know the need is quite large. On top of that, we see the big overall data within Oregon that shows that Oregon in particular has been lacking in access to earned income tax credit. We're consistently ranked close to last on this critical resource out there for folks. So we know this work's important, and we know we have a lot of work to do moving ahead. Some of the big things that we're excited about that we've had to pivot with the COVID environment is we've really developed out and implemented a all online course to train and certify volunteers in federal and Oregon tax issues specifically. And we're making that available for any Vita TCE partner in Oregon. So we're really excited about the development of that, and think there's a lot of potential to help lower the barriers for getting entry into this program. One of the most essential things is having a certified, knowledgeable volunteer that can work one-on-one with individuals to get their taxes done. Without that, that's what this whole thing depends on. So we think training is a really big piece of that, because it turns out taxes can be somewhat complicated. So the training is a really important piece. So we're really excited about the development that we've done and some work around that. In addition to that, we've been constantly tinkering away, trying to think about how to pivot and organize in the COVID environment. And we've come, I think we're now on our 4th edition of thinking through how to do taxes in a COVID environment. But this year, we're in response to the Omicron variant, we are pivoting to an all online volunteer tax prep model where people can upload their documents remotely, and we have volunteers working remotely to get their taxes done. And we think there can be some advantages to this on a geographic level that we're excited about. Another big piece that we're constantly working on and thinking about is trying to organize statewide level support to really develop systems change. This is a complex issue that requires intensive volunteer hours to be able to work through. So we're constantly working with CBOs, nonprofit organizations, government organizations, trying to find a statewide solution to really thinking through what systems change can look like to make this problem of lack of EITC access, lack of understanding around the tax code get further broken down. So that's an action-packed statement with a lot of things on there, but overall, we are working really diligently on trying to provide this really essential service to be more available comprehensively in the state of Oregon. So with that said, we can go to the second slide here. Was trying to think about what support overall do we realistically need on the ground to be able to provide this service out that much more. And the big one, as I alluded to earlier, is volunteers. First and foremost, we're constantly in need of identifying talented, tech-oriented, detail-oriented individuals that want to be thinking through how to give back to their community in a comprehensive way. So we're always looking out, trying to identify and work with organizations, some of which are actually on this call that we've worked with in the past on identifying with this. So a big thank you to some of you that they're already on this call. But we're always looking for organizations that we can partner with on identifying further volunteers. And we know this work is complex. We know this work takes serious hours to do. So we are always looking for investment support to help expand and scale this essential service, both on our local level within the Portland area, but also statewide as much as we can. And with that, I think I took my 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Riley. Monet, next slide. Dan, take it away.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dan McAvoy again with the NeighborWorks Umpqua Vita tax program. I'll address this slide before I go into a little bit more about us. This was something that came out of the University of Chicago, a study that was done on the EITC and the impact that it has and how important it is. And that's a reason I bring this up is because that's a big push from our funders. Our program is totally grant funded, and they're really focusing on the millions of dollars that was left on the table, federal dollars that really needs to get into our state and through our state and into our communities, and especially the rural communities that I kind of represent. As you can see, the impact for $1,000 increase in the EITC results in almost about a 10% reduction in CPS involvement. That's Child Protective Services. And in turn, that saves the state millions of dollars as well. So it's kind of a, what helps our taxpayers helps all of us. And so I wanted to share that because that's really the drive. That's what we're after. We could go into what the ATC is more, but I encourage you to really learn what it's about. And the only way for these families to access it is by filing their taxes. So the biggest hurdle is to get them in and actually get the taxes filed. And that's where we come in. That's where people like Riley and Sue and everybody that does this work across the nation, but especially in our state, that's the bridge that we provide is a way to get that money into their hands. And so that's why I feel it's so important to keep this going. Of course, we all know the challenges that we faced, and we are like Riley said, pivoting all the time and always learning and going forward. And there's been some good that's come out of it, because in some ways it's made us stronger and made us more capable to reach the unreachable. And so, there is some positives, but the negatives are that it's really shrunk our programs. It's reduced those people willing to volunteer. It's made it harder to volunteer. There are aspects that you can do virtually, but there's also aspects that really suffer if you don't have in-person preparing. So saying that, our program, I'm really trying as hard as I can to keep a in-person element going this year. We have a site in Roseburg, we have a site in the Coos Bay North Bend area, and also a site in Reedsport. We also are part of a coalition that includes a couple of sites in the Portland Beaverton area of a Korean speaking community. And also we're working with the two state colleges, OSU and OU, and providing mutual support with them virtually. So we're growing. I don't know how, but we're growing because I think the need is there, and everybody sees it, and there's a lot of partners that are coming alongside. Of course, I have the same needs as any other site or any other program. Volunteers, we did about 876 returns last year with about 8 volunteers total. So if you look at the national average for Vita sites, we do 2 to 3 times the amount per staff member in our program than the national average does. This program is in danger of dying because actually we're losing our fiscal sponsor at the end of this tax season. And if we're not picked up by another nonprofit to act as our fiscal sponsor, then this program will cease to exist, and it will impact quite a large community. So that's a unique need I have, I think, maybe, but I'll throw that out there for anybody that has any ideas for that. But I'll pass it on from there. I appreciate your time, everyone.
Thank you, Dan. Sue, take it away.
Sure. I'm Sue Curtis again from the Skagit County ARP Tax Aid Program. And we are a mostly rural, small town area. A lot of poverty, large Latino population. We have 40 to 50 volunteers in many roles, many of them with 10 plus years of volunteering in this program. I have one person that is not a senior citizen, and everybody else is mostly in their 70s. I have several in their 80s. And like I hear from Riley too, we need to replenish our stock, and especially in the tech area. So during a normal year, we complete about 1,700 returns. And last year we did 400, and we were pretty happy to do 400. We have very strong relationships with our host sites that welcome this program back year after year. We actually operate 5 sites, and we're one of the few counties that have all 5 sites open this year. We have very, very, very resourceful volunteers now into our 3rd year of the pandemic trying to do taxes. And we have transitioned totally from in-person to kind of an intake process in person, but everything else done over Google Meet on our Chromebooks. We find that very difficult to do. We could not get one person tech savvy enough to do a face-to-face Google Meet. It was just a voice Google Meet. So next slide, please. Again, replenish our stock. We have a huge need for tech support and volunteers. We have one tech person, and he's wonderful, but he's spread really thin trying to support. Also, we have moved to Chromebooks, and most of us are almost all PC Microsoft people, and the move to Chromebook has been difficult even for our best people. Website report, Google support, just general tech. We also have no funds. AARP does provide a Chromebook, a mouse, printer, scanners, but all the remote preparation that we've done has caused everybody to need to find a second monitor because, you know, Chromebooks aren't very big, and if you try and do a split screen, these old eyes can't see much. So that has really been either scrounging for donations from people, or most of us are providing our own second monitors and all the equipment that needs to go with it to connect to our Chromebooks. Probably 85% of our people are seniors that we have. We do have one diversity site that is a late afternoon, early evening site that deals mostly with our Latino population and our working families. So, but lots of the tech support is lacking of tech support from the clientele is a huge burden. We have the ability to upload all the documents on a customer portal. I don't know that we'll have anybody have the ability to do that. So that is one of our biggest hurdles trying to deal with people. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Sue. Andrea?
Okay, yeah, hi, good morning. Again, Andrea Alexander. I'm a Makah tribal member. My reservation is in Neah Bay, Washington, the most northwestern tip of the United States, but I work all over the Northwest. We have the Native Asset Building Coalition that's committed to helping Natives with their financial needs. And we also have tribal technology training, and that's really been a dream since 2015 to help Natives access online skills, because many of our rural reservations have lacked internet access. Therefore, people don't have the skills to work online. So we are part of a network called Connect Washington that is a digital navigator program that provides Native American trainers. In other words, we take people that are based in their communities, train them how to help people in their community, because without the ability in a pandemic to go in person, it's really difficult to provide any kind of service in any area. So an example of partnerships, there's 29 and we have a very diverse urban Indian community all over the Northwest, whether it's Portland, Spokane, Yakima, Seattle. So our clients are really diverse. And one thing I want to talk about successful models and kind of how-to solutions approach. We have tribal governments. These are really successful models of what I call private-public partnerships, and they provide economic vitality and direct government services. So many of our tribal enterprises, as you know, are a huge economic impact to rural parts of the Pacific Northwest. For example, Colville in Northeast Washington is the largest employer up there. So there's really a lot of vitality with the tribal government. But still, on the other hand, Native people, we are the highest unbanked population in the country. The last study that was done in 2020, 16.3% of our Native people are unbanked. And although many of our tribal governments have positive cash flow that drives very productive working relationships, financial institution, most Native individuals, even if they're in a rich tribe, are cash poor and unbanked. So there's a real contrast and difference in the stereotypes I want people to understand. So one of the strategies I think that we could look at for all the resource providers and partners, I work with partnerships because we really don't have any staff. We're all volunteers too. A strategy is to reach out to tribal governments or enterprises to share information and support on possible Vita sites. For example, these tribal governments have money. They could be a sponsor for your Vita sites. They could help put together a deal that works in the local community. So look at these, my community-based organizations, as also building that relationship, because you could get funding from them. Next slide, please. Barriers and opportunity. How do we step up our game in this very difficult time? So in the pandemic, this really prevents direct services to Native people. And we have an oral tradition. We like to meet each other face to face. Also, many of our people lack robust internet skills and access to online services. So here's an opportunity to think about, we have great banks in the Northwest with great customer service. I'm very happy with my bank. I won't say who it is, but they have just like the best staff. I just love the people there. Why don't you think about reaching out to local anchor institutions like a tribal government, a tribal enterprise, or a community-based organization to team on a public information campaign to improve access to financial literacy resources like Vita sites, like these. We really need to think outside of the box and step up our game on collaboration during the pandemic, because we really can't do it on our own. And also remember, business is based on direct relationship. It's not what you know, it's who you know in the community. The other barrier to think about, unbanked individuals lack knowledge on tax issues, period. So here's, again, the opportunity here that I would put on a partner event to provide technical assistance support for Vita sites, other services, or sponsor a mini resource fair in your community where everybody puts their logo on, they get to promote each other, have a cup of coffee. Yeah, it'd have to be social distancing, but if there's any way that we could do a social distancing in-person event, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm praying for. So we've had to do workarounds, and most of our work is done via Zoom, but we're still hoping to have a Native American Financial Resource Fair the first week of April. Another barrier, you may have a lack of a robust personal network to conduct outreach to those the highest in needs. And now it's even harder again, because we can't do a lot of face-to-face. But I always try to work on personal relationships in the community. If you don't know anybody, why don't you ask that person that might have a connection to that organization, that tribe, or somebody with money to make an introduction? Because right now in the pandemic, we're isolated. Nobody just picks up the phone to call. You know, you really do need to make a personal phone call and initiate that outreach so that we can start building those interpersonal relationships that have been broken down, right? Next slide. So just to kind of overview, tax issues in any country are also kind of complex because of tribes are sovereign nations. So on a trust land, it's very difficult. If I live on my reservation, it's really difficult to get a home loan because it's on trust land. That home can't be repossessed. So we have worked with HUD to develop the 184 instrument that provides loans. But some income is called treaty income. And I'm from a fishing tribe, so I'm using the fishing rights. That's called treaty income. And it's not subject to federal or state taxes. And that's good for the cash flow, but it's bad for the fishermen because right now Nia Bay's got a high level of elderly fishermen that don't have any Social Security. So that's a downfall. They don't have any retirement. You know, they have to work till they're, you know, barely can put that pole out there. Also, a lot of tribes give what they call per capita payments to tribal members. Per capita means mostly that's probably from the casino income, and the council has made a decision to provide checks to that community. Some of this money is not subject to taxation, but some of it is, and so that can be a little tricky. But I will tell you for a fact, I'm Native American, I pay full taxes on everything. Most natives pay taxes on and off the reservation. So even if I was running my consulting business on my reservation, I still have to pay taxes, and they do qualify for tax credits. So that's really important. So one thing that would be interesting to do is if you want to really build a relationship with the tribe in your region, recruit speakers with expertise on treaty-based taxation issues and sponsor training. So one thing that I can tell you that tribes are really sophisticated. We employ a lot of lawyers and lobbyists, and there's probably one person in that tribe that understands the complex tax Indian country. The other thing is to partner with large urban community-based organizations to promote Phytosites and other opportunities. For example, United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, that's run by my brother-in-law, Mike Tooley, in this Seattle area. It's a huge organization with a lot of clients. They provide a lot of social services. So your social services agencies are really important to work with to make sure that single moms understand their EIT income tax credits. Next slide. So Tribal Technology Training, we are a 501c3. We formed in 2017 to provide digital training. It's really important to underscore the need for this training because remember, there's never been any funds to provide training to whether it's elders that Sue you work with or grassroots single moms. They just do not have these skills. We've got to do these online skills. So we do finally have grants to move this training out. And then we link that with our Native American financial empowerment training. The way you can work with me, you can come and be a speaker at some of our Zoom events. I work with all allies. I was working with First Nations financial institution who is very sophisticated, but they're in Colorado. And so my strategy now is to work with non-Native organizations, allies in the Pacific Northwest to form these networks where we can collaborate and develop and provide services to people that are in service, especially in the pandemic. So I have my contact here, Andrea at tribaltechnology.org. My cell phone number's there. I'm always ready to talk to people and come up with ideas. And I'm just praying that we can have an in-person event in April. We'd probably do that at Daybreak Star in Seattle, but time will tell which way the world turns in the pandemic crisis. Thank you for letting me speak, and I look forward to working with everybody here.
Andrea, thank you very much for that. We're going to do something a little bit different right now. Jennifer, hold out on those results. Monet, thanks for advancing that slide. But Karen Dunn, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you put something in the chat, And I was wondering if you could take a moment, very brief moment, if you could talk about that for a moment, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me a couple seconds. I'll try to be brief, but those that know me know it's almost impossible. So I work for the Washington State Department of Commerce, and what our role is in EITC, Phytosites, things along that line is we manage the EITC and family and the child care tax credit outreach across the state of Washington. As far as like getting the word out, getting people knowledge on it, providing education, things like that. So that's my role. But when I heard, I can't remember, was it Daniel? Two things. Daniel mentioned losing a fiscal sponsor. And my first thought here is, well, could the state where you're located in help out with that? Not sure if you've explored that, but I know in our state that would be a possibility. But then it was the previous person, and I'm sorry I lost the name, but she mentioned the fact that there's monitors needed, laptops, equipment, all of which are costly and impact the delivery of services. I totally get it. So the state of Washington does have a surplus it's called a state surplus office, where you can go online physically and they have everything posted online, but you can buy monitors, laptops, couches, chairs, phones, about anything at a minimal fraction of the cost. So, and these are already wiped clean. They're ready and suitable for pickup. And this is available to organizations, individuals. You can buy cars on this site, all sorts of things. And these are surplus equipment that the state offices have donated or provided to the surplus office. So just provided that link, and maybe folks can utilize that. Thanks for the moment of time.
Great, thank you very much. Jennifer, can you post those results from the poll? Okay, so I'll just stay at kind of the larger level right now, referring clients to tax sites. So it's already been explained that we will be providing a roster of all the registrants. I have several people on the line that did not register. We're not going to kick you out. But if you did not formally register, if you could please put your email in the chat, that would be very helpful so that we can make sure that we include you in that roster. And so what we need is your full name, first and last, with your email address, and then we'll be able to include you on that roster and have you down as a registrant as well. So it's very important for us to be able to share that resource with everyone, but we also need to make sure that we've got everyone included that's on this webinar or in this meeting right now. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is looking at creating partnerships to expand services with low-income consumers. So that's 53% of the people here said that they're willing to do that and participate in that. So again, being able to use that roster, make sure that you put your first name and your last name in the chat if you did not formally register. That will allow us to make sure that we capture your information. And then I also see we've got high percentages for recruiting volunteers, and then even organizing and running a free tax site. So let's make sure that we're able to make these connections. Jennifer, thank you very much for that. Monet, we've got a couple of minutes here before we get to the breakout session. Let's see. So I just want to throw a quick question out for Riley and see if we can do this in a minute or less. What do you think banks could do better to support Phytosites?
What can banks do better to support Phytosites? I think I've seen some really good examples of how banks have been able to interact with us on a local level. I think the easiest low-hanging fruit is trying to think through how can we organize a systematic way of trying to identify volunteers to be able to come into the site. We know the sites have a huge need People are coming in left and right on there. The lowest hanging fruit is, can we organize trying to find volunteers that would be interested and able to come into the environment? So some banks have even gone and explored, like, can we identify specific ways to provide designated hours for our employees where they will be paid to volunteer, essentially, and get involved in that way. And we found some good results in doing that. So I think that's a real good low-hanging fruit for banks to get involved in.
Great, thank you for that. We've got another minute before we go into the breakouts, and we'll explain that in just a moment. Dan, you really expressed some key components about keeping your site open. What are some key initiatives that banks could support?
Well, I could see what I think would be really good for a community, and I think the banks could really get behind this, is to sometime in the fall set up run some tax clinics, I guess, for lack of a better word. Just some temporary tax clinics that you run in your community. The banks could come along as a sponsor. They might even provide some speakers if they have any people that are, you know, good at that or very knowledgeable about taxes. We could also interface with local CPAs that would be willing to get involved with that, to teach people about basics of taxes. Because one of the biggest blocks for people to file their taxes is the unknown and the fear of the IRS, and I don't know how to do this, and they don't know. And so if I've found that if we provide a little education and they get familiar with that, that's somebody calling to make an appointment right there. It never ends. If they're able to get in and meet these people and that provide these services in a friendly environment, and they learn a little bit about it, I think it would do two things. It would get them to our sites. It would get them getting their hands on that money that they need, and working with the banks that introduce them to that. And number two, it would also be a good recruiting tool to maybe find some more volunteers through that as well, because there's been several times people have come in, we've helped them, and they've realized, oh, this is so easy. Can I help out next year? And so I think it would be a synergistic effect that would help a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and it would benefit anybody that was involved with that. So I like the idea of tax clinics. That's what I have.
That's great. Now, Sue, Dan mentioned that he's rural, but you're kind of rural too, and we're going to get to these breakout rooms. But I think it's important just to kind of get that ask out there as it relates to your most immediate need. You mentioned monitors and those sort of things, and Karen was kind enough to share about some additional resources for you and your site. What are some things that you could do from either a banking partner or from another key stakeholder?
Well, I think, we need the ability to be able to buy some things that AARP will not reimburse us for, such as the monitors, different cord connectors, things like that. But we need two things. We need volunteers. We need quality volunteers, numbers people, a lot of ex-bankers that maybe are done with their career, that understand numbers. We can train on the tax law, but realize that it is hours and hours and hours of training every year, as we have to recertify every year, and it is a commitment. But I think another thing is the ability to try and help people become more tech savvy and trusting of technology. I don't believe we're going to go backwards in technology. It's just going to get driven more and more that way, and trying to get the folks, especially in my area, it's the seniors, to be more trusting of the online presence that they could be taking advantage of, that they don't need to write checks and pay money for stamps anymore. And I think that the banks the banking institutions could really help with the technology support.
Great. Andrea, we've got really about a minute left in this segment before we go to our breakout rooms. And so for you, a key sector or a key stakeholder or an initiative that a bank can do or help improve in working with the tribal communities as it relates to tax services. Did we lose you?
You're muted, Andrea.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
For Native Americans, we're somewhat transactional. We're okay with that. The potlatch culture means that he who gives the most away is the leader in the community. It's not the accumulation of wealth. It's he who shares. So if you make me look good by giving me money and sponsorship and to put on an event, I would love to invite you to my potlatch party, and you can promote your bank. You know, you can talk about your product. You can help educate that person. I'm okay. We're okay with that. We're okay with being transactional. That's the way we do business, because in the good old days before the pandemic, everything was done around Native American conferences. We love to go to our conferences. We love to put on a big party. We love to go and have big conferences at the casino. So we really wish we could get back that way. But there's no staffing to do this work. I mean, I'm it. There's barely anybody that's able to do this anymore. So I really think that if I could get sponsorships, then I could recruit the volunteers, give them stipends, and get more help. The other thing a bank you might want to think about for Vita volunteers is, what could the bank give you that's not really expensive, like a gift certificate or savings certificate or a cash card from your bank that would help support those volunteers? So, you know, I think that people want to help, but, you know, people are in survival mode. You know, they might need some gas money. They want to be able to buy coffee for their event. So those are just some ideas to think about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Monet. Jennifer, can you go ahead and just give an overview of the breakout rooms, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 4 breakout rooms with themes. We have Native communities with Andrea, rural communities with Sue, metro and urban communities with Riley, and then suburban and small cities with Dan. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, and you can select what room you would like to go into. And we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Be returning now. Right, we're down to the kind of the faithful few. I'm going to ask Sue.
I had 4 or 5 folks join, and some good questions about how to sign up to be an AARP volunteer, and a person in Eastern Washington wanting to know what sites were available in her county. So I'm going to get that information out.
Very good, very good. Riley.
Yeah, we had a conversation kind of thinking through some of the technology limitations of having an entirely virtual volunteer tax prep experience and what sort of needs there would be out there. So like access to printers, access to scanners to be able to get all their documents in. And the other thing we talked about was training. What does volunteer training look like? What does it take to become a certified volunteer, and how to get involved in that?
Great. Andrea?
Yeah, we had 2 people. It was really interesting. We talked about tribal examples. So Vicki works for Congressman Newsom and talked about the Yakima and Colville tribes. One of the big problems, again, we have is that the Yakima tribes totally shut down. So it's really be difficult to have to have a site open in person. So the ideas of how to do work around a hybrid site seems to be a good solution where part of it is in person and online. And then we also had somebody from the Whatcom Asset Building Coalition, and I didn't know this is really interesting. There's a Vita site sponsored by the Northwest Indian College at the Lummi tribe. Have a computer lab that they've done there, and they've been able to conduct business in hybrid situations. But the situation is definitely, in our conversation, is definitely dire, especially in Central Washington, where there's a super high level of poverty and unemployment. And so when people are in survival mode, I think one of our biggest challenge is that just getting to the people that are highest in need in a pandemic. To me, that just is a really big problem. And I just don't know how we're going to work our way out of this, but we're continuing to fall behind in getting services to the people that need it most.
Thank you all for reporting out. Monet, can you go to the last speaker slide? So while she's doing that, I really just wanted to thank our speakers. Thank you for sharing what you're doing, what's going on, and both some of the challenges, but also the work that you're doing. So very, very appreciative of that effort. It's phenomenal, the work that you're doing. So for the bankers, this is some of the outcomes that we're looking for. If you could go, is that next steps, Monet? I'm a little out of order here. Thank you. So identifying your opportunities to collaborate with free tax services. That's what we did today. And then meet with some of these tax service providers, connect with them, utilizing the roster to follow up, and then finding ways to recruit some folks and just identify those collaborative opportunities. And then over the next 90 to 100 days, and I think Dan talked about this moving into the future, he talked about some viable opportunities that are there. So it's not that it just starts right now, it's also they need help now, but also want to start moving towards the 2022 tax season as well, is from a preparatory standpoint. Monet, next slide. And one thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention back there, but don't forget about getting your IT and technology partners within the bank that can help providing some networking solutions and those sort of things. The desired outcome is that a couple of you banks will actually get some volunteers there at the tax site, provide some funding so that they can expand their services, increase their capabilities. And the nonprofits, you are able to meet with a couple of people. Dan, we're gonna steer some folks your way, make sure that you're getting access to some resources, that get some bankers engaged with you, so that you can have some viability and some sustainability. But that's these are very important things that we've talked about in pushing that work forward. We really want to just take advantage that there's an opportunity to grow these partnerships and collaborations and to sustain these services and prepare for the next tax season as well. Monet, next slide. I want to thank Monet for working our way through this, and that's it for me. Greatly appreciate you all very much. Monet, I'm going to turn it over to you.